Welcome to Upticks with Jake Falcon, founder and CEO of Falcon Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, we help high net worth individuals overcome financial complexities. We do this by enhancing financial literacy and discussing topics in a language free from industry jargon. Join us as we help explain exactly what having a solid financial plan means, as Jake draws from years of experience in helping hundreds of individuals get financially organized and focused on their goals. We hope you find Upticks educational, entertaining, and shareable. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode 226, How to Not Run Out of Money in Retirement. Cory, it's great to be back on the show.
Yes, it is. Thanks for having me here today.
Well, great to have you, and thanks for holding the fort down last week when I was out traveling.
My pleasure.
Now, I got to ask, Cory, I got a haircut today, and my wife didn't really like it, but we're combing it back, so I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Look the same?
It kind of looks like mine.
That's what I said.
Does that mean that Rachel doesn't like my haircut?
No, I think it has to do with I don't know why she doesn't like it when I switch it up. I just switched it up a little bit. It's just back instead of over, but I think it looks kind of Wall Street.
I think it looks good. And you know what? You've got hair on your head.
Which is great. I'm thankful for that. In the season of gratitude, I'm thankful for that. This show will be rolling out after Christmas, Cory. So real quick before we dive in today's episode, which is a very important one, by the way, it's probably the most popular show we'll do in 2022, if I had to guess. But what is your favorite Christmas movie?
Trading Places.
Yeah, mine too. Which a lot of people don't even think is a Christmas movie, but it is. You got Eddie Murphy, you got Dan Aykroyd, you got frozen concentrated orange juice futures. It's got a little bit of everything. Great movie. What about, you have a favorite Christmas tradition or holiday tradition?
You know, we're actually, it's worked out really well in our, for Cassie and I and for our families, where like we spend Christmas Eve with her family. We spend Christmas Day with my family. We're going to be hosting everyone here. As far as traditions go, though, like on my side of the family, actually, which is small, we just do like a Secret Santa. Everybody has one other person in the family that they shop for, and that's it. How about you?
Yeah, we used to do that growing up, actually. It was kind of cool because I grew up in Texas. So we would come up here on Thanksgiving and we would do a Secret Santa. But no, Rachel, my parents, we typically spend Thanksgiving with, and on Christmas, it's kind of Rachel and me and Einstein have kind of started our own traditions, which has been a lot of fun. So Rachel and I always pick some cool dishes to cook. We celebrate Christmas morning. She'll have mimosas and coffee cake. And it's just a good time for us to be thankful for everything and reflect, watch some TV, clean up the house. So it's just a good recharge for both of us. So I like it low key. I don't like, we don't have like a big family get together or anything. I like it kind of low key. And just to get to spend time with her and Einstein is really all I could ask for. So
yeah, absolutely. That's what it's about. I do think, though, I have to share this with you, Jake, though, because we were just talking about Trading Places, and for the people watching and listening. So just this morning, I went to get my annual physical, and I was talking to my doctor who's looking at actually buying a home in Florida, and him and his wife are headed down there on Christmas Day. And he said the day they get there, the temperature is going to drop to 23 degrees in Jacksonville, Florida. And he said it's going to be so significant that it's going to affect like the crops. He's like, maybe we can get our hands on that crop report, and I should go long frozen concentrated orange juice. I said, maybe. I said, I just watched that movie last weekend, and we're like, that's a great movie. It really is.
It is I'll probably watch it here this weekend. So this is a good one. Okay, so enough of our personal stuff. So today we wanted to talk actually about a very important subject. And it's, basically how to avoid running out of money in retirement. It's probably we just did a survey of our clients, Cory, and this was the number one concern amongst our clients. Even though they've got financial plans, they've got, in my opinion, great wealth advisors and planners and investments, they're still concerned about it. So it's a very real concern. And I don't care how much money you have. You could have millions and millions of dollars and this still be a very real concern for you. And the reason I think, Cory, is because when we're working and we're generating an income from active employment, that paycheck's coming in. And when that spigot is turned off, now it's on to you and your advisor, or if you're doing it on your own, and your investments to make sure that this nest egg that you've accumulated over a 20, 30, or 40-year career lasts you the rest of your lifetime And nobody knows how long typically that'll be. So, hopefully it's another 30 or 40 years, but you got to make sure you have enough money. You got to make sure it's invested correctly. You got to make sure you're spending it correctly. And those are all very valid concerns. So we wanted to go over kind of some bullet points or some topics that we discuss with our clients and how we can help them make sure they don't run out of money. And I'll start here with number one. And the number one maybe is obvious, but it's something that we do every time that we do meet with our clients is we want to look at that financial plan trajectory. Now, we have three types of clients at Falcon Wealth Advisors if we're looking just from a planning perspective. We have client one, where their financial plan trajectory actually shows their assets, Cory, growing in retirement, meaning the longer they live, the more money they'll have. We have a second type of client where their trajectory is flat. So basically they have $1 million today, and in their 90s, they have $1 million. And then we have a third set of clients where they have, their financial plan or their trajectory is running out of money. And again, I don't want to alarm anybody, but we do have plans that look like that. And in order to avoid that, we're going to go over things that you need to do. But for my point number one, and Cory, I'll let you go into point number two, though. So point number one is you want to review that trajectory and make sure that it's heading in the direction you feel most confident and comfortable in. So for my example, my third type of client, Cory, some people are okay with running out of money in their 90s, and they're fine. They're going to live off Social Security. Maybe they'll sell their house at that point and live off of those proceeds or whatever. But as long as you're comfortable and understand what that is, the most important thing, though, is you want to review that at least once a year. Cory, did I miss anything before you go on to bullet number two?
Nope, that's very good. And I do like, though, how you talked about the trajectory, because I think that's much more important than like getting anchored to a portfolio value at 90 years old, right? It's understanding, is my money going to keep growing? Am I utilizing and spending it, or am I going to be spending it down?
Good. All right, so good. So what's point number two?
Point number two is to spend less than you make. This is a good way to not run out of money in retirement or while you're working, for what it's worth. But I do think that spending less than you make may seem obvious, but it's important for people to understand. And I think especially, in an inflationary environment, like one we've been in, where stuff's gotten more expensive, the last few years, the way that people just spend money has changed so dramatically with the pandemic starting. We're now kind of in the post-pandemic world. Things are starting to look much more like they did before it ever happened. But the same thing still holds true, which is spend less than you make. And in the context of someone that's retired and is evaluating their financial plan and their portfolio, I think a critical number to understand is what kind of income are your assets actually generating for you, and how aligned can you get your spending with that number?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So if you're worried about your trajectory and it is showing you running out of money, the quickest way to turn that around is to look at your dividends and interest, your Social Security, pension. Maybe you're working part-time. You want to add up all that income and you want to spend no more than that, and if anything, less than that. And that's a good way to get that financial plan turned around. Now, for some of our clients, they're spending way less than their income, and they don't need to make any adjustments. And sometimes with those clients, we encourage them to actually spend more. But if you're worried about running out of money, the best way to get that turned around is to add up all those income sources and make sure, or do what you can to spend less. Now, one quick thing that our financial planners do a great job of is they'll do something called stair step. So maybe you can't afford to spend less today, Cory, than the income, but maybe you can cut some of it next year or in 2 years or in 5 years. But as long as you've got a strategy to say, okay, well, my car is going to be paid off in 3 years, Cory, I'll cut my car payment spending then. Or I've got, an asset that I'm going to sell, that'll free up some of my cash flow, or my mortgage will be paid off, right? If those debts or those liabilities start coming off your obligations and you can cut your spending, the good news is you don't have to change your lifestyle. You're just not paying the debt anymore. That's kind of another way that we can help you spend less than you're making. Good.
Yeah, I think the one other point I just want to make here, though, Jake, is I would implore people when they're thinking about, particularly if someone's financial plan does reflect them running out of money, right, or spending down their assets before the end of their plan or the end of their lifetime, morbid as it is. I think that, I think the idea of spending less money in the future is much easier to grapple with than actually spending less money in the future. In other words, like it's one thing to know, okay, down the road I need to reduce my spending, but it's another thing to say, okay, that day has come and it's time for me to do this. And I think it's one thing if somebody has liabilities that get paid down, right? They just don't need as much cash outlay every month. But if that's not going to be the case for some people, and for some people this holds true, right? They're spending more than they're making and they don't have any big liabilities that are going to fall off. I would challenge and implore them to evaluate what their expenses are and what's most important to them, and then figure out where they can start to trim that back. Because it's one thing to have a financial plan that looks that way, and it's another thing to acknowledge it, but it's a third thing to do something about it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Good.
What's
Good.
next?
So number three, so number three, Cory, would be invest wisely. And so we've talked about this on prior episodes, but the key is you want to make sure that you have a combination of both growth and income investments in your portfolio. The growth is the big component that'll hopefully help you not run out of money. And the income is what we just talked about, is money that you can live off of in the short term. But there are risks. If you have too much money on the income side and it's not growing, like you mentioned earlier in today's episode, inflation could take over and you might not have enough money to sustain your lifestyle over the next 30 years. And just conversely, if you've got too much money on the growth side and you don't have enough on the income, you may be forced to sell some growth assets when they're down in value. So we want to make sure that we've got an appropriate amount. With us, we like to have at least 5 years worth of income allocated in cash or bonds. And then we typically, lean on the growth or the stocks for your longer term bucket, ideally 10 years, but at a minimum 5. But again, you got to make sure you invest wisely. And then another very important piece, Cory, before we go to the next bullet point, is that you don't want to throw your investment strategy out of the window when you have volatile years like 2022. You want to stay disciplined to your investment strategy and understand, as far as the way that we do it at Falcon Wealth Advisors, we know we're going to have bad years in the market, but that doesn't mean it's time to change our strategy. We might change our investments or rebalance or reallocate, but we're not going to try to time the market and start making risky bets. That's typically a surefire way to really blow up a financial plan, is to start really getting dramatic or extreme or trying to time the market with your investments. So again, staying disciplined, realizing you're going to have good and bad markets, and then make sure you've got the appropriate allocation that aligns with your financial plan.
Excellent.
Lots of head nodding there. Thank you.
No, that's really good. It made me think of something that I read this year, earlier this year, that talked about how basically the cardinal sin of investing is turning a temporary loss into a permanent one when something's down in value, and then selling it, realizing that loss. And I think that's just especially important for someone in retirement, when the ability to accumulate and the ability to build those assets back up isn't there. And that's why your point around ensuring that your investment strategy is aligned with your financial plan and is aligned with your spending, that's what can help someone avoid turning a temporary loss into a permanent one.
Right. It's good. Good.
All right. So our next bullet point here is to be willing to change. And I think that you've highlighted on this podcast before, Jake, and we certainly talked, I think you've done a good job of explaining that a financial plan is not a roadmap, because a roadmap is static, right? On a roadmap, the line goes, I guess it's different on our cell phone, but you think about actually pulling out the map, right? Things don't change. It's going to be static. But recognizing that when we're doing planning for a 20 or 30 or 40-year retirement, that life's going to happen, things are going to change. The more open-minded and willing people are to changing, I think, frankly, the more comfortable experience someone can have, and the higher probability they're going to have of not running out of money in retirement.
That's exactly right. Now you've got to roll with it. Life changes, just like you have unexpected events with your furnace going out or your car breaks down. Sometimes you need to spend more money than we have projected. You've also got to understand that, hey, if I'm wasting money on cigarettes or whatever, something that we know is unhealthy, maybe it's time you should change and cut that, because it's going to help your financial plan, right? So be open and willing to change, because again, life changes, and you've got to understand that just because a financial plan works today doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work forever. That's why you want to update it, roll with it, and change things as they present themselves. Very good. And then the last bullet, Cory, that we'll make today is that, and this kind of, I alluded to this a little bit, is to align your spending with your values, right? So if you're like me and you value playing golf a lot, but you don't necessarily drink coffee, then if I was just habitually buying Starbucks coffee every day, even though I didn't really particularly enjoy it, maybe, there you go, Cory, maybe I could cut that Starbucks coffee out and allocate that money to playing golf, right? Or golf balls or whatever, right? So you just want to kind of check in with like, okay, what's really important to me? What do I value? Where do I like to spend my time, most importantly? And let's make sure that my money is aligned with that. And I'm not just habitually spending just to spend, or I don't have some sort of problem that I need addressed. Maybe you are having Amazon addiction and you're just shopping on there constantly because of COVID. Maybe you need to check in with that and say, do I need to be buying this stuff all the time? And again, I'm not suggesting you cut everything out of your life. I'm suggesting you figure out what's important to you and what you value and then spend accordingly. But don't waste your spending.
Yep, that's really good. And I think I'd just like to add one kind of actionable point to this for people that are thinking through this, because this is something that I've done myself. When we talk about aligning your spending with your values, I think you've done a great job of explaining that here today, Jake. But I think, like, practically speaking for people, something that I've done, for example, is I've looked at quite literally like my homeowner's insurance, my auto insurance, expenses like that. And rather than just set it on autopilot and pay whatever the premiums are, that's something where it's important and it's critical that I have auto and homeowner's insurance, but I don't have it loyalty to any one company. It's not important to me. I don't value this specific company as long as it's someone that I think is trustworthy and is going to pay out if I have to file a claim. But that's an example of an expense that every single time I've gone through that process and I've gone and shopped it, I found the same coverage, if not better, for a lower price. I just had to take the time and energy to do that.
Right. That's exactly right. So yeah, spending a little bit of time on it, you maybe, and it's a lot. It's daunting for some people, Cory. So again, maybe once a month you pick something that, an ongoing bill, and you review it and say, can I get a cheaper cable bill, or do I need Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and all these? Am I watching all this stuff? Maybe I cut one of them and see if I really miss it, right? There's a lot of things that you can do to be creative and don't feel overwhelmed, and know that we're here to help at Falcon Wealth Advisors. I mean, we've got financial planners that can help give guidance on this. Cory and I certainly can meet with you to discuss it. We even have a building blocks exercise if you really want to get after it. It's a pretty neat tool that we have in our office, is that you basically get your income, if it's $10,000 a month or whatever it is, and each block maybe represents $1,000, Cory, and then you allocate it to where you're spending money. So we put it all out on a table, and you see how many blocks are being spent on different categories, and you can graphically see, oh my gosh, I'm spending 2 blocks a month going out to eat, right? I can get that down to $1,000 a month and spend that money somewhere else. So again, there's a lot of things you can do and we can help with. But it's all about alignment with us. That's a big kind of key theme of today's episode, is that, making sure that you have everything invested correctly, you're willing to change, you review that trajectory, we want to get everything lined up, and then you stay on top of it. And that's the best way, in our opinion, to make sure that you never run out of money, because it's a scary endeavor and it doesn't have to happen to you. You don't have to be a victim of that. There's a lot of things you can do, but you have to hold yourself accountable and let us give you guidance and advice. Because we can't, I wish I had a magic wand and I could say, no one's ever going to run out of money, Cory. They can spend as much as they want and they'll be fine forever. It doesn't work that way. Everybody has a limit. Even Elon Musk has a limit to how much he can spend. Everybody does. And so you've got to understand what that is, line things up according to your values, be willing to change and make adjustments and cuts if needed, make sure it's invested correctly, and spend less than you make. Right?
That's it. I think it's I think just understanding where people spend money too is something that not everybody has their arms all the way around. And for clients of Falcon Wealth Advisors, we have a great tool through our client portal that will automate a lot of that for you, where you can track what you're spending. For me, doing that exact same thing was a very revealing exercise. Cassie and I talked about this as we were we got a quote for a landscaping bid for next year, and it was ridiculous, which I kind of expected it to be. But I literally went back and looked, how much money have we spent on this house since we bought it a few years ago, and the things we've done. And the two of us agreed, you know what, we're going to take 2023 as a year where we're just going to enjoy living here. We'll prioritize maintenance, but we don't need to be spending huge, large sums of money, what I would define as large sums of money on the house every year just because we live here. How valuable and how important is that? It's not saying that we're never going to do it, just understanding that there's a time and place for it, and that if I didn't take the time to understand what that actually looked like and track those expenses, I'd have no idea. But it ended up actually putting us in a more solid place together, because we understand that we're just going to take a year and we're not going to have any major home improvements, God willing, that we can get around, because we understand what the spending's actually been.
Right. That's exactly right. Rachel and I do the same thing, Cory, is that we'll quarterly, typically we'll say, okay, what projects do we want to put in the pipeline? What's most important to us? And, we'll kind of knock it out then, but we're not going crazy and doing everything at once, right? We want to make sure we can afford it, and then we'll get the most bang for our buck.
Yep.
We did the same thing. I mean, we cleaned up our backyard and took out a bunch of trees. We planted some, but we didn't finish that project because right now it's good enough for us, and we're enjoying it the way it is. Sure, we would like to have, Rachel would love to have hydrangeas out there and all this other stuff, and maybe we will do that at some point, but for now, we've worked on other projects, right? And so maybe some are smaller, right? And we're getting enjoyment out of there. So good point. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, good. That is all the time that we have for today. I don't know why. If you're watching this on YouTube, my screen was blurry. We'll try to work on that for next time. Cory, yours is crystal clear. I like that. But maybe I need to work on my home studio. I need to work. Maybe it's my new haircut.
Maybe.
But we'll figure that out. But thank you all for tuning in. We hope you had a great holiday season. We look forward to cranking out more episodes in 2023. You can expect more on the stock market, because that's what our survey kind of gave us back as feedback. So we'll probably be rolling out more shows on market updates, certainly more with financial and retirement planning. And then maybe we'll sprinkle in, Cory, some fun episodes in there as well. So thank you for joining me, Cory. Thank you all for tuning in, and we hope you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Upticks. Click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. Also, be sure to visit our website, falconwealthadvisors.com, and click the Contact Us button if you'd like to meet with Jake and his team.